Hello and welcome back to Spy Hard's podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur, searching for a good barcode.
You are in desperate need of many things, including a barcode, Cam.
Still looking, though.
Well, speaking of in need, we're in need of some intel, and you're back for another SpyMaster interview, folks. Cam, who do we have joining us this week?
Yes, we are joined by Adrian Askarieh, who was the producer of both Hitman and Hitman Agent 47, this week's movie.
Yep, we are continuing our deep dive into the Hitman universe. Video games, films, it's all coming together here on Spy Hards. And, we love going behind the scenes on these films and bringing you the stories from basically how these things are put together, be it actors, directors, writers, or in this case, producers. Adrian has some fantastic stories about how he got the rights to these films and helped put them both together. He does not hold back on his thoughts on the films. He's very frank about it.
And very frank about the process as well.
Yeah, it's refreshing, and I really appreciated his insight. We hope you do too. So without further ado, let's get to it. Cam, roll the interview. And joining us now on the show, producer extraordinaire, here to talk us through the Hitman films and some other spy secrets too. It's Mr. Adrian Askarieh. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey guys, how are you doing? Good to be on with you.
Living the dream. Cannot wait to collectively shave our heads and put some barcodes on the back of our heads. I mean, I've pre-shaved, as you can see. I'm
Yes,
ready to go.
Ready. You're ready to go.
I want to dive into Hitman because that's what we're talking about this week. Hitman Agent 47, the second film. But I think to chart the course into that, we need to talk about how you got your start in Hollywood and in producing. So the question I kind of want to start us off with is sort of what made you want to get into filmmaking, and sort of what was your first step into the filmmaking process?
Well, I was an attorney. I was an attorney for a firm in Century City, entertainment, intellectual property law firm. Mm-hmm. And, I've always, the only thing I wanted to do ever since I was a kid was to be in the movie business. I didn't know what a producer was. I kind of knew what a director did. I knew I didn't want to be an actor. So I kind of my formative years, I figured out what a producer was and what that kind of role entailed in terms of bringing a film to the screen. And then I really wanted to be a producer. But I made a promise with my mom, who was for the most part, single mom raising 3 kids, that I was going to go to law school and practice for a couple of years and then do whatever I wanted. So we made that agreement. I kept my end of the bargain. I went to law school. I became an attorney and ended up practicing for 4.5 years. But when I was at that law firm, I had a lot of comic book and video game clients. I had Mr. T as a client. I trademarked I Pity the Fool for him, which to my shock, they had not done anything with regard to protecting that trademark for him. So we did that for him. And I represented Jack Kirby's state and made a deal with for a project of his called Satan 6 with Fox Kids. This is obviously long after Jack had passed. And then I also had a big kind of hand in video game deals because I had a good friend of mine who had this independent video game publisher that had a deal with all the first parties, meaning Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo. So that kind of busted me into that world, and I would be going to E3 in its heydays and make contacts, and kind of got back into video games myself. Metal Gear Solid mostly, which by the way I got the rights to in 2001, and I went and met Kojima in Tokyo, and he was gracious enough to say, "You guys can do it." We had a great pitch. I wasn't even a full producer. I was still an attorney, but I did that for 2 big producers. And when it came down to for them plunking down the money, they chickened out, for lack of a better phrase. So that went away. But Hitman was something that I ran into, and I just felt it was very cinematic. I thought the character was very iconic. I thought he was a cipher in the best way possible. There was a kind of a vicarious, quality to the character. So I kind of was very interested in him. And then when I broke off, I worked with this producer, Chuck Gordon, and I kind of cut my teeth on The Girl Next Door. I didn't produce it, but I kind of was shadowed him on it. and worked with him on it. And he said, "What do you want to do as your first producing gig?" I said, "I want to take a shot at getting the rights to Hitman," and which wasn't the case because I ended up getting the rights to Spy Hunter, and we got the Rock attached at Universal and sold it in a bidding war and had John Woo on board, and I worked with John Woo for 7 months. Uh, Developing the script. That movie never went anywhere, and we spent, Universal spent a ton of money against it and never went anywhere. But I always had Hitman in the back of my mind, and that's why I went after the rights. I hope that wasn't a long good answer.
No, it was perfect. And I remember the Spy Hunter development over the years. I remember reading about that so many times. I also think it's interesting, you kind of cut your teeth on The Girl Next Door and you have a Timothy Olyphant connection, of course, with Hitman.
Yeah. And there were so many people in that. Paul Dano was in that, and Olivia Wilde. It was, yeah. But we never even thought that Timothy would be, in the Hitman movie. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a small business, man. I mean, any way you look at it. So that stuff happens all the time, even if you're not aware of it. So when it came time to say, okay, I want to, make this movie happen. How do we do it? We didn't have the rights, so I flew up to San Francisco and met with IDOS at the time, and just through serendipity and great luck, there were other people up there pitching on it. We ended up getting the rights.
And what really jumps out to me is that there's so many video games that haven't been made into films, right? And like big ones, you got Legend of Zelda or Metroid or things like that. The fact that like Hitman clicked with Fox and you were able to get it made, what was it about like Hitman that just managed to get it across the line in comparison to things like, Halo or Grand Theft Auto or other big games of the time?
Well, I mean, Hitman, actually, to just preface it by saying that we sold it to Fox in fall of 2005.
Mm-hmm.
It was out fall of 2007. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. I've been involved with Johnny Quest at Warner Brothers for 14 years. So, and that seems to be the norm. But I hope that's not the norm for everybody, but that seems to be the norm on many projects. So that was pretty quick. And I think that to answer your question, Hitman is something that's very cinematic. People can see the cinematic concept. I mean, let's talk about 2005, where the kind of the knowledge base of video game movies and, even special effects at the time, even though it was 12 years after Jurassic, they weren't at a point where people could extrapolate and say, yeah, we can make a Fallout TV show. Yes, we can make a Halo TV show. We can do all kinds of world building with video game movies in a cost effective way. Well, relatively cost effective. But Hitman was easy. It was an action genre. It was about an assassin. It was very interesting. The sci-fi element was very understated. The cloning aspects of it, so people could see it being made as a movie. And I think that helped us a lot, rather than if we had gone in there with some, gigantic science fiction piece. And, we would have been in development for a lot longer than we were on Hitman. We really didn't have any development period on Hitman. We had got a great script out of Skip Woods and we were off to the races. And then all the bullshit happened. But still got made,
Well, that's probably the next step on the journey of Hitman. You mentioned Skip Woods coming in with the script. I guess casting is probably up next on that sort of list of things you were needing to do to put a film and get it out so quickly, like you mentioned. Timothy Olyphant becomes Agent 47 in the film. Were there any of the names being bandied around at that point for the role? And how did you end up with Timothy?
Well, I mean, first we got Skip, and Skip wrote a script that was still to this day one of the best action scripts I've ever read. And the executives at 20th Century Fox felt that way, and agents at William Morris felt that way, and they signed him off that script, from another agency. I mean, he had left already, but he was going to pick, he was thinking about which agency, and WME just went after him. At that time, it was called Endeavor, but they hadn't merged yet. But, so we had a great script, but we also had Vin Diesel attached to play Agent 47. And and then it turned out that the movie was not going to be that Fox was going to make it for a price, right? That they were going to make it, but they were going to make it for a price. And Vin was, one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And it just financially, the Fox and his team couldn't agree on it. And so we ended up having to go a different direction. But Vin was the who we wanted attached as 47. Not that Timothy, there's not a knock against Timothy. We weren't even thinking about anybody else. So that conversation about, okay, so who's going to play 47 hadn't started. And then Timothy came about from the Fox end. And they called us and they said, have you guys seen Deadwood? And, Chuck is like, I work with him on Girl Next Door. I hired him, and it was more of a comedic scumbag, like a porn producer role. But obviously in Deadwood, he was a lot more closer to the universe of what eventually the 47 character would become. And so that's how that came about. And then Fox wanted to really make it for a price. And again, I'm not trying to be flippant by saying this. It's when you work with a major studio, anyone can tell you it's their money, right? So once they have the rights, you try to fight and argue and debate in a civil way for your position, but it's their money at the end of the day. So you have to know what you're getting into. But they wanted to make it for a price. Like, I think that the first movie cost $26 million.
Right.
And they said, well, in order to do it for price, we got to take advantage of the French subsidies, and we got to bring in Luc Besson's company on it. So that brought in Europa Corp on it. So we ended up being partners with them in making the movie. And so then a lot of the actors came from Europe. Like the Dougray Scott character, and Dougray is a great actor, is a great guy, but that character, in our mind, we wanted kind of who's the next Tommy Lee Jones in the US. That's who we wanted for the role. So we had to kind of reconfigure what the movie was, and the script could never be filmed for 26 million. I mean, it wasn't easily. We budgeted it at like 78. It was still the same story, but it was pared down. And but we went ahead, and the movie got made, and it was a challenging post-production period, but and we were going to come out in October, and I remember we still weren't done, and then we came out in they gave us a Thanksgiving release date, which both excited me and horrified me, because that Thanksgiving 5 movies were being released. But when our trailer hit with Die Hard, everybody, like, I got emails from most head of studios who knew me. They're like, you're going to have a massive hit. The Ave Maria trailer came out. They said, this thing's going to be huge. And again, keep in mind, guys, I know you're a spy podcast, but, video games weren't what they are today, right? You had to you were going against, countervailing wind and perception, and you had to kind of prove that you had the goods. And everybody thought it was going to be a smash hit. And but I was still worried that it was one of the 5 movies being released. Anyways, I don't want to jump ahead to the release. I know you have other questions, but when it came out, it did 22 million over the weekend, and we go, oh, wow, this is going to be great. And then it kind of slowed down. But, to this day, that movie has done over $100 million on a $26 million budget. And it didn't have a $50 million marketing budget. So, it's a successful film.
Definitely.
But it wasn't that Skip Wood script, because I think that script, had it been done the way it should have, I think that could have been something very interesting, very special.
Yeah, I remember reading interviews with Xavier Gens, the director, and talking about how he had a very difficult time with the studio on Hitman. And was it sort of the issues of dealing with the original script and then the budget cuts that just caused a lot of these headaches?
Well, I think it was the budget cuts. It was, look, listen, as I said, I mean, it's the studio's money, right? And, your job as a producer is to defend your director and try to kind of be a peacemaker between everybody. But, as I said, Xavier is a good friend of mine, and I'm working on something with him now, top secret. Xavier is a very passionate, has big vision, and, has the talent to back it up. But, he was making his first movie at an American studio. So there was a kind of there's a bit of a adjustment period, I think, for both sides. And usually, these movies, my experience has been they end up getting tricky, not in the production phase, because you need the director, right? You need the director all the way through, but you can't just not have the director and replace him or her during production. But I think post production it becomes very tricky if the parties don't see eye to eye. So it was part of the growing pains. It again, I'm not trying to mitigate it by saying that it happens on more projects than you guys realize. So yeah, it was difficult, but he got through it.
Well, there is that side of the film, but I think one thing that when we spoke about the film a couple of months ago, we really championed, and I think it was a complete success of the first Hitman, is Olga Kurylenko.
Yep.
You basically birthed that star into Hollywood. She then went on to be in the Bond film, and she's had a massive career since then. And this is really, for what many say, is where she was discovered, and I think it's a fantastic performance from her.
She was. I mean, that was her first big role. That's what brought her to everyone's attention. She got Bond off that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I know that for a fact. It was told to me by people involved in Bond, and I mean, you guys are, and she was really good in the movie, and it was a tough role for her. But you guys don't understand the impact of that first trailer. Like everybody wanted to be kind of get into business with everybody who was just based on a trailer because it was so unique, so brilliantly put together by the Fox marketing people. Brilliant. And then, by the way, the guy who marketed it is also one of my good friends. He's now one of the people at Paramount. But it's so and Olga had such an amazing look, and she's a really good actor. I when she got Bond, I was so happy for her. I kind of wish her choices after that were as strong, but she's a constantly working actor, and she's also a very nice person.
I'd love to know, just in terms of adapting Hitman, what the biggest challenges were, because it's such a different time period for bringing video games to the big screen, and now you have like Last of Us on TV, for example, which people absolutely love. But when you're looking at a game, what is the best way to translate that to film? Because I think Hitman walked a pretty decent line there.
Well, I mean, listen, I've been kind of preaching this for a long time, and then I never forget it. Somebody tweeted me a couple of years ago because I was talking about a video game renaissance. He's like, yeah, well, you kind of ruined it with Hitman Agent 47. People who don't make movies, who have no idea how they get made, just pick people and blame them for things, and I'll tell you how this relates to your question, which is, Hitman, I think the beauty of it was that the fact that it was a video game was just an icing on the cake. The fact that it was a popular video game. It was a fantastic cinematic concept about an assassin, about a unique looking assassin, very iconic looking assassin, very interesting world, very interesting kind of a creation myth around the character. I think that's what helped it. So you didn't have to create worlds. You didn't have to. It wasn't Warcraft, right?
Right.
It wasn't Legend of Zelda. We would just look at it saying, well, it's either going to be a shitty fantasy movie or we're going to have to spend $200 million on it. Now, I happen to think the Zelda movie is going to be phenomenal, the one that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was a different time. And I think, projects like Hitman and Kane and Lynch were conducive for that time because they just happened to be video games, but they were action movies. But I've always said it. I said the key to making a good video game movie is that you have to have enough people involved in it who respect the material, who have grown up with it, who understand that it's not just a cynical play at an IP. Let's take an IP and do whatever we want with it, and everybody will show up. I remember there was a person on our team, I'm not going to name. He kept saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter if we don't do this or that. They're all going to show up opening weekend anyways." I'm like, that's not the case. That's not the case. These are characters that they have a very close affinity for. They play them, so there is that kind of vicarious, emotional connection. I know people say emotional connection with a video game character. Well, that's true. And so you don't have to be slave to the material, but you have to respect it. You have to not bastardize it. You cannot say, in order for me to be involved in this movie or make this video game movie, it has to, video games are for kids or they're for this or they're for that. And I'm going to have to elevate it. That's, when people do that, you get The Last Jedi, right? So it's a very fine line. And I think you have to know that, there's a reason why you wanted to do this project because it's a fantastic creation by the people who made the video game. But cinema is a different medium, so you have to take all the best elements and formulate it into a cinematic experience. And I think Hitman, lend itself beautifully to that in 2005, 2006, 2007. And I think it felt a lot easier and frankly a lot more cost effective than Metal Gear Solid, as an example.
I mean, Metal Gear would be a hell of a mission to take on. Just the legacy of that game. It's almost a film in itself. All of those games are almost a film in themselves. Sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But speaking of the creatives on Hitman, this could maybe segue us into 47 as well, is IO Interactive, IDOS, Square Enix, where they're owned by at certain times. How involved were they in the creation process of both films? How did they have input, or did they just let you get on with it?
Well, they were involved because I involved them, and those days, the deals were done differently, right? I mean, it wasn't, I'm sure there were exceptions to the rule, especially if you dealt with Nintendo even then, but it was like you made a deal and it was studio and the producers can do whatever they want and you will have meaningful consultation, So that was it. But I involved them because they were my friends. I involved them as much as I could. It was my first movie. And so it wasn't like, I was Jerry Bruckheimer or Chuck Roven, whom I mentioned earlier, right? But I was just trying to stay above water myself. But I involved them as much as I could. I had them send tons, and I remember caches of conceptual art and stuff for upcoming Hitman games, confidential stuff. I would share them with Skip and the team, and they would kind of design the movie that way. So in that sense, they were involved. But in today's world, where one of the creators of Last of Us is the EP of the show, and not in a name EP, but it's actually really involved. And a friend of mine, James Altman, who was an executive producer on Fallout, he's at Bethesda. He's fully involved on set all the time. It's a totally different game, and I prefer it this way. As a matter of fact, I'm doing 4 other video game titles right now that all of them, the people from the companies are involved intimately. I won't do them otherwise. It's just not worth it. And as long as everyone has realistic expectations and knows their roles, it to me is a futile, foolish attempt to try to do one of these without them involved.
And I would love to know, as your first film, what were the big lessons you learned from the film Hitman when you were looking back on it that affected the way you would go into Hitman, the Agent 47?
Oh boy, how honest can I mean, I don't. How many people listen to these things?
A fair few. Certainly, the first episode Hitman review was very popular. So there's a lot of Hitman fans that tuned in for that.
Let's put it this way. Okay, I think I can answer your question. As I said, it was my first film. I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to keep my head above water. There was a lot of challenges on practical side and personal side. So the reason I'm prefacing it with this is because I don't want to blame anybody. But to answer your question, having said that, I think you should choose the people you go into business with. Doesn't matter who they are, the studio, the other producers, writers, directors, whomever, very carefully. And you can't always succeed in that, but you have to at least team up with people who share the same vision. And sometimes they all share the same vision, and then all of a sudden they don't.
Sure.
And by that time you're far too gone, and there's no way to to turn around the aircraft carrier. It'll be, it'll be awful. So, kind of read between the lines is a combination of those two answers, But I tried everything I could. I tried my best. I am very proud of that script. I think it's the script that I think we shot 20% of it, maybe 35% of the essence. That script is one of the best scripts I've ever read, ever. And Robert Newman, who's a major agent at WME, represents everybody. Guillermo del Toro, he said to us, because it's one of the best scripts I've ever read. And Skip did it. I mean, it was an incredible script. But that to me, I thought I thought we were going to blow Bourne Identity out of the water with that franchise. But You live and learn.
Definitely.
It was. Hey, it played at the Chinese. I got to go see it in the Man's Chinese. I never thought my name would be up on the screen in that theater. I grew up in New Jersey, watching Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, getting their hand and footprints in front of that theater, and the history of it. Charlie Chaplin's The Circus premiered there in 1928. And here was Hitman all over the marquee and my name as producer inside on the screen. It was before it was refurbished. It was the old school Chinese. So, yeah, so that was fun.
I mean, like, issues to one side for a second. You manifested this film into being. You said you wanted to get the rights to this film, and you did, and you made it into a film by hook or by crook. You got it there, and then, just under 10 years later, there's a sequel.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
no, I think you're sort of on the same lines.
I mean, the problem is the movie made $100 million on a $26 million budget, and it took us that long to make a sequel.
That's my question.
That should tell you about whether you like the first Hitman or not.
Mm-hmm.
It did $100 million on a $26 million budget. I mean, it outgrossed all the Resident Evil movies. It outgrossed Transporter. They all got sequels. We didn't. That should tell you when I say you need to be with the right team. So that's like I'm glad the next question kind of retroactively shed some light into into that question. So that Cam asked and my long-winded answer. I tried to make that movie for as long as to do a sequel. As long as I had a breath in my because I really believe in this character, and I feel like we didn't get it completely right. Even though the movie that Xavier directed and Fox brilliantly distributed was fine and successful, I just didn't feel like we got the Hitman movie I envisioned. So we kept trying and I remember James Gunn came in for a pitch. He's not shy about this. He tweets about it like the producers didn't want me and I'm glad I didn't do it. I dodged the bullet. I get it. Okay, I get what he's saying, but he doesn't have the facts because James came in and had a phenomenal pitch, like blew us away. It was a direct sequel to the last one, but it almost reinvented the last one. And he took the Olga character and the 47 character and put him into a world that none of us expected, right? And this was pre-Guardians, James Gunn, okay? So, and he was brilliant. And I remember Chuck and I and Daniel, who was the executive producer, were like begging the studio to like, this is it, we let's go, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. But James somehow thinks he was us. I guess when I see James, I'm going to tell him I wish I was that powerful. And so that was something that allowed us to say this can happen. We can make a good sequel. We don't have to reboot it because here's this really smart writer coming in and pitching those two characters. What happens to them after the first movie, and where do we find them together? And I thought it was just so fucking cool. I don't want to share it here about what the concept was, but because James is not one of the biggest filmmakers in the world, and I don't want any internet stuff, but it was brilliant. And so that felt like, okay, we can do this. And then when it didn't happen with James, I think Joe Casey came in, who's a big writer now, is writing the Fast and the Furious movies, and he had a great take. I mean, it was totally different than James's, but he was freaking awesome. And of course, the studio. No. And so that was kind of like we were treading, water for a while. And then somebody had the idea of bringing back Skip Woods, the original writer. And that's how kind of things got rolling again. I think there was a kind of a safety net there for the studio. Skip is a brilliant writer. I have nothing against Skip. It's just that doing a sequel where you should be going into if a movie costs 26 and makes 100 million, you should go into the sequel. You should have commenced the writers within 6 months, but it didn't happen that way. So it was a very disjointed process. And then Skip came in and did a script, which kind of, to me, was a little bizarre, not the writing or the script, but the fact that we put 47 in the background and made it about a female character that he was hunting. Felt like Terminator. And then I found out that was the that was the desire, to make it a Terminator movie, kind of a. So I try to do whatever I could to inject as much Agent 47 and kind of a thing into it, and that's how we kind of got. It gained traction, and we ended up laying tracks towards production. It would take another 2 years, but it wasn't just hearing pitches from writers.
It's so interesting because when you think about like franchise filmmaking, it seems like so often the studio, they want that sequel yesterday. And where it feels like, just from you talking about the story with Hitman, it was kind of like the studio was a little indifferent. It was kind of like waiting for the pitch or something that was kind of like that golden ticket of like, oh, that we like, but otherwise we kind of don't care so much.
100%. It wasn't a little. It was very indifferent, which was bizarre.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, the James Gunn pitch and the Joe Casey pitch were brilliant by not just my estimation, but just if you just want a cool movie, those are the movies. Those are the versions you would do.
Mm-hmm.
And they were totally different from one another, but they solved the problem. It was a kind of a reboot and a sequel all in one. But yeah, I think, Cam, you described it better than I could. That's the way it was. But by hook or by crook, we got the second one into production.
Well, okay, production's rolling now, and the main question I had going between the two is: was there, obviously Timothy Olyphant doesn't come back for the role, and we spoke a little bit about it in the review, but I think Rupert Friend did a fantastic job actually as Agent 47. I think he really channels the role really well, because I really liked his performance in the character. But how did that process go? Because we also read about Paul Walker being attached.
Timothy had kind of send out kind of a message that he didn't want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't interested, and that's fine,
Yeah.
So we were going to reboot it, anyways now, and this way we did it with a clear conscience. But he didn't, and he's terrific. I mean, a great actor. Obviously, I don't need to sing his praises. He's a great actor, but he said, "Yeah, been there, done that. Don't want to do it." I don't think he had a great time on the first one. So then we ended up getting Paul Walker, and Paul finally agreed to do it. And I think he even went in for his physical and passed insurance. And then on Thanksgiving weekend, he passed away. Obviously, we all know it was just fucking horrible. 2013, I'll never forget it. And I was coming out of the gate of my community, and it popped up on my feed. I just couldn't believe it. Not because of my movie. I mean, that made it even more surreal, but I was just shocked. So then we decided to obviously, we had to recast the movie. It was brutal, but we had to do it. And Rupert came in to read for the villain.
Oh.
The character that Zach Quinto played. But we never forgot about him. Just incredibly dedicated to his craft, real actor, serious guy. Genuinely into building his character and having everything make sense, not just his role, but other roles. Just a kind of an actor you want to be in business with. And so when the idea of Zach Quinto kind of came about to play John, and he's like, well, let's look at the candidates for 47 again. And Rupert always stood out to us. And so we met with him, and he we hired him. He got the gig. And then the last person to be cast was Hannah Hughes, who ostensibly is the biggest role in the movie. We saw everybody. I mean, we saw everybody, and who was available, and we just couldn't figure out the kind of the right person that would have chemistry with Zach. And at that time, production was blooming. We were full prep. We had crews in Berlin. And then Hannah came in, and she really impressed us. There was a vulnerability about her. There was a sense of longing about her that the character and the script required, and so we went with her.
Was there any nervousness about filtering the film through her experience, like her POV, versus making the Agent 47 film? Just with
I was shitting in my pants about that. Yes, yeah. But this was not a reflection on Hannah. It's just the take felt like we were making a video game movie, but we were just taking the IP and making a movie that we wanted and just slapping the IP and the character in there, which is, again, I'm guilty of. I'm not trying to pass blame on other people. Just blame me for everything. But that's not the way it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you make a video game movie. That's not how you make a comic book movie. That's not how you adapt a novel to the screen. You just don't do that. If you're going to do that, don't make it. So, but nonetheless, that was the task in front of us, and we kind of rolled up our sleeves and went about doing it, and tried to do the best job we can. But it just felt like, to me, that the foundation wasn't there on the second one. That we were trying to, what is the saying? Fit a square into a peg, or anyways. But
yeah,
I used to know it better, but I forgot about that axiom. It was, to me, it wasn't a Hitman movie. It was a Terminator movie with Hitman subbing in for Terminator. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I would never do that with Hitman ever again, and I would never allow anybody to do it. And again, not knocking the director, not knocking the writer, other producers, the studio, knocking anybody. As I said, let's just put the blame on me. But that's not how you do a Hitman movie. And let's address the elephant in the room. That was the problem with that movie. And the other problem was took this psychological stealth character with this fascinating backstory, this really interesting, dark world behind him that has created him. And we turn it into a Jason Statham action movie, which is fine. But again, there's that mutuality. They're mutually exclusive. You can't turn it into a Terminator action movie and just say, hey, it's Hitman Agent 47.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Red Alert SpyHards, we are shaking things up over on the Patreon page.
That's right, we are launching an exclusive new show where we tackle the exploits of the small screen's greatest secret agents, like Jack Bauer, George Smiley, and beyond.
And don't forget, every month you also get 2 Agents in the Field episodes where we decode the adventures of your favorite spy actors in their biggest non-spy movies. But Cam, tell the people what we have coming up next.
Commence your roaring, folks, because we are going to time travel back to 1998 and tackle the wannabe blockbuster Godzilla, directed by Roland Emmerich and starring Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno. Why was this film so radioactive at the box office? We are going to investigate.
So strap on your Condor Man wings and soar into the future with us over at patreon.com/spyhards.
But before Big O zaps us with a red pulsating laser, let's get back to the Spy Jinx.
One thing I think that you should be really proud of about 47, though, is the action in the film. Thanks to, the John Wick team, Chad Stahelski, David Leitch, doing the stunts second unit work on the film. It's fantastic, its action sequences, and I think that's a really good get for that film. How did they come about being involved, and what was it like working with them?
I agree with you. I mean, those guys are awesome. Again, the action is, I'm proud of the action in the movie. I think, I remember shooting a sequence in a subway in Berlin, and we had a drone in the subway, and we had hundreds of extras. I mean, the team was professional, top notch. They trained with Zach and Rupert and Hannah, and we shot a kick-ass car chase in the underneath the Olympic Stadium, the famous Olympic. I never forget it. We had one of the world's biggest drivers on set. It was freezing, and these guys were doing their stuff. And I got to meet Chad and David months before that at their studio when they were together. And believe it or not, Keanu Reeves was training in the ring. And for a movie, they said it's called John Wick.
Yeah.
I'm like, John, what? And then they're like, why are you calling a movie like, who's John Wick? He goes, well, that's what the movie's called. We're directing it. I'm like, amazing. So we got to meet Keanu. He was all sweaty and had his gloves. I think he had boxing gloves on because they had a training facility in their place by the airport. So they lend us the team, and then when we ended up doing reshoots a few months later, both Chad and Dave came to Berlin, and we were together there for a month, and we worked on the reshoots. And I remember there was one time where Chad was doing one scene and Dave was doing one scene, and we would go from one stage to the other with them. And But they, like they, you could tell that these guys are fucking inventive. They know what they're doing. They're good with a crew. And I never forget it. It's a funny story. I don't think it's on point with what we're talking about here, but it's funny. Well, in a way, it is. When we wrapped the movie, the first time go around before the full Chad and David reshoots, not the full movie, but just, and it wasn't really a reshoot. It was just adding action scenes, big action scenes. And David invites me to see an early screening of John Wick at Lionsgate. And it was a night I was flying to London to set it on the edit because we were editing the movie in London. And I remember it was like 11:30. And Fox calls me. He's like, you need to go to London. I'm like, guys, what the, like you're on the 11th flight, whatever. But so I go see it. And as soon as the movie's done, I bolt, I leave. So I get an email from David. Who's like, dude, what the fuck? You didn't even tell me what you think of the movie. So, and I explained to him why, but I said, David, I got to be honest with you, man. I you fucked us. I mean, who the hell cares about Hitman at this point? I saw John Wick. It's like, you've done Hitman better than we can, which is, I was being facetious, but not. So, I saw that movie. I'm like, well, we're fucked. But yeah, they're great. They're great to work with, and they're really good, down to earth guys, and they know what they're doing. It was fun to be a part of it. I just wish we had a story to go along with it.
Well, I wanted to ask about the action as well, because it's really violent in both the films. Both the films have like splatter moments. There's actual blood on screen. Was there any pressure to make it a PG-13 film? Either one.
Yes, it was a pressure, but we all decided, and thank God for Fox, that felt it would be more robust marketing and it's an R-rated movie.
Wow, and I feel like that would not have been the case at a certain point as well. That's especially that kind of post-Taken success, where it was like every action movie had to be PG-13 for a while.
We felt like we couldn't be PG-13. I'm not particularly a fan of CGI blood. That's just me. Not saying it doesn't work, but we had a lot of it in the movie. But yeah, that was kind of built into the marketing. That I remember even Fox announced that it was going to be R-rated with a tweet, so they kind of leaned into it, and we just one of the best experiences I had on 47 was meeting Kieran Hines, who's one of the most brilliant, serious, kind, sweetest guy I've met on a movie set. Just the best, man. I really wish I get to work with him again. Just comes, does his job, hits his mark, delivers amazing performances, reads his book while setup is going on. Just a fucking old school, man. Loved it. Anyways, go ahead.
You mentioned paying sort of loving homage and taking the source material seriously and trying to work that into a film instead of using it as sort of an IP to build your own film around. But one thing people do tend to look out for in video game adaptations and that sort of stuff are Easter eggs. And there are a few scattered around both the films. Obviously, you've got like the rubber ducky in the bathwater, stuff like that. What was sort of your favorite one to sprinkle in? And is there any that you've added in that maybe people haven't caught up with yet?
Well, the rubber ducky, I thought that was key. Obviously, the logo. The one that's kind of funny, which is I insisted that they do it. Nobody wanted to do it. I just forced them to do it. And it backfired in my face. Was the albino at the end of the movie, the end credit with Albino. Because Albino was a really cool character in Absolution. And I always felt he was the 47's Joker. And I'm like, we got to bring this guy back. So we had a conversation with Zach, and he graciously agreed to do the makeup and and all of that. And so we shot it and just put it in the end credit. And to this day, I get shit for it.
Why? Just because it was a cliffhanger for another film, or?
Like, well, what are you doing? Cliffhanger for another film? Like, come on, why don't you focus on this film? And what the fuck? I'm like, you know what? Shut up. But
it was the era. The Marvel Universe had opened the door for like sequel teases.
I like it.
Dude, I totally ripped off the Marvel Universe. That's what I was thinking I was doing. I'm like, that's our Thanos. That shows how dumb I was. But it was fun. It was fun. Like, they did a beautiful, our makeup team did a great job with Zach. He was so game. And I love the shots. I love how the shot kind of tracks on the ground and with the electricity and but in terms of Easter eggs, the one that really the Robert Ducky was key for us. We had second unit shoot that, and I can't remember a name. Maybe there were other ones, but I don't remember. How terrible was that?
There's a few more in the first one. There's a few more scattered in the
first one. Xavier
Um,
is such a fucking huge fan of the games. So,
Okay.
Well, speaking of directors, I would just like to know a little bit about, we haven't mentioned him yet, Alexander Bach, who directed the second one, and what he brought that was different than you were getting on the first film.
Well, Alexander is a great guy. He was a very successful commercial director when this was his first movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we had challenges in that regard. I mean, it's no one's fault. It's a first movie, and you're dealing with a studio, blah blah blah. But he had a great visual style. There was a lot of pathos in the way he wanted to tell the story. I still think the scene in the interrogation room, with I love the way it's shot by Alex. I just love the way it's shot, and so he kind of brought that European, but not coming from the action world, kind of coming more from like an ethereal commercial world element to it, which I thought could have been interesting. But again, I think the idea of a Terminator movie just didn't fit that style, if I have to be honest. I think Alex would have probably made a better movie if it was more in tune with the psychological, character-driven version that 47 really, really is,
Well, okay. You've got two Hitman films in the bag at this point. Okay. You are still with Hitman as far as I know. What's the future of Hitman looking like?
Well, I can give you this nugget, which I think you guys could use. I don't know, but you'll be the judge. But there's something big happening with Hitman. Very big. I can't tell you the details, but I can tell you it's not a movie. It's got a mind-blowing creative team involved. And I'm not including myself in that. I mean, I'm involved, but I'm not mind-blowing in any way. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say mind-blowing. Like, when people find out about it, people are going to lose their shit. And what we're doing is we're doing the character and the world, and especially the last three games, the trilogy, which have been the biggest Hitman games.
Mm-hmm.
The IP is bigger now than it was when we made the movie, which was unheard of. So that is kind of about to, knock on wood, explode onto the world. So that could be interesting for you guys to maybe tweet out, but I'll leave that up to you. But it's I think 47 is coming back. I know 47 is coming back in a way that I don't think people expect, and in a, I think, pretty significant and powerful way.
Okay.
I like a good tease. We deal in subterfuge here. This is a good place for that sort of thing. And if you happen to need two rather inept a British and a Canadian in the background somewhere, do let us know. We'll happily blow ourselves up on screen. It's all good. Well, that's Hitman.
Yeah.
But you are a man of many talents, and you have many different. You have many different franchises at your command. And you mentioned you're working on a few different sort of IPs. You said at the beginning. I looked through what I could find on IMDb. I'm sure there are some that aren't even on there that you have connections to. Two jumped out at me that are spy connected, and the first one is Danger Girl, which is comic book strip charts its way back to the late 90s, if I remember correctly. What's going on with Danger Girl at the moment? Are things still proceeding with a movie?
Danger Girl, we had 3 false starts with it. I had it before I was at Constantine Film. I had a deal with them. And then I had it with Constantine Film, and we had Jeff Wadlow, who was going to write and direct it. And we had very much of a Danger Girl script that honored J. Scott Campbell's 6-issue blockbuster, and also Renegade, which was the origin of Abby Chase, that came out a few years subsequent to that. But it didn't happen. And so Scott and I continue talking about it. And, the best way I can say it is that I'm about to announce 2 really big comic books who are going to be together for the first time in one cinematic, if you will, universe, with Alcon, which is the company behind Blade Runner 2049, and they're shooting the Blade Runner TV show right now for Amazon, and their Garfield the movie is there. So I'm about to announce that with them any day, and they want Danger Girl, and I've talked to Scott about it, and Scott is like, Adrian, I want to, if it's something that's real that we can agree on, I would love to do it with you. But as of now, it's back with Scott.
And one thing I was curious about is with actually connected back to Hitman, because you prompted a question in my mind about shared universes. I know Cam had a question. He might phrase it better than I can.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was during the press for Agent 47, and you were talking about potentially creating a shared universe with Hitman, Just Cause, Thief, and Deus Ex. And I would just like to know more about kind of what you were thinking at that point in time.
Well, I would, if I had the rights to all of them, I would do it in a second.
Yeah,
but I don't. I'm only involved in Hitman. I lost Just Cause, and David Leitch is now doing it as a producer at Universal.
Right.
Deus Ex, I have no idea what's going on with it. I mean, we tried it. We had Scott Derrickson on board, who was wonderful and is wonderful, and it's just I have no idea what they're doing with that. I don't think anyone has it. I'm not. I heard the studio closed or let some people go. I have no idea. Don't quote me on this. And then Thief, we just tried to get it, and I don't think the game was significant enough for it to kind of make an impression with people. I love Thief. I think design-wise, character-wise, it's so fucking cool. But I think Assassin's Creed also preempted that a little bit.
Right.
But I would love to team up Rico Rodriguez and Lara Croft. That's what I would do. That's where I would begin. But obviously, Lara Croft is at Amazon, and Rico is at Universal, and Agent 47 is at Disney. So it's at 20th Television and Hulu. So they're all at different companies.
And in the wake of Agent 47, was there ever consideration of a third film? Because I know that the Fox Disney merger happens in 2019 and probably puts a kibosh on anything that could happen at that point in time. But was there?
Well, the movie didn't do it. The movie didn't do well. I mean, it made 85 million worldwide. And but again, it didn't cost as much as other movies. But it's had it made the money that we thought it was going to make? Yes. But so that kind of like. But I will tell you this. This is why I love this character. Nothing can stop 47 because it is such a fucking cool brand. It is such a cool universe. And IO has done such an amazing job with the games, especially the last 3. And the world building they've done, the fan engagement they've done. And there's 70 million real players around the world for this, and including in India and Japan and Asia and Latin America, obviously Europe and North America, that it doesn't matter what the movie does. I think there's always going to be an Agent 47 film content. But now the games are bigger than ever. I mean, I keep saying that, but it's crazy how big this brand is now. And I think what the movies have done, whatever you might think of them, they have exposed the character to audiences that do not have video game consoles and don't play video games. I know that my sister's friends and they all know 47. Hitman, the bald assassin. I love the Timothy Oliphant one. Oh my God, I love that character. He's so tragic. He's so cool. So it is that kind of the non-gamer, non-fanboy audience that loves the pathos of this character. There's a tragic element to this character that if you really utilize in what you do with him outside of games, I think that's why again, I don't want to trip over my words and reveal the big spoiler, but I think that's why he'll be around for a long time and, on film.
Well, it's also like you've mainstreamed like just the image of the character. Even if you never saw a Hitman film, like you never watched an entire film, maybe you saw the trailer for one of the Hitman movies, And just that image of the dark suit and the barcode on the back of the head, that just instantly sticks with you, so that later on down the road, if maybe it's a TV show or something else comes out, people just recognize it, even if they just, had never seen the first two films.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was wearing a Hitman T-shirt, I think about 2 years ago at an event, and there was this older gentleman in his 60s who was there, and he's like, "Is that Hitman?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're a fan." He goes, I saw the movie once, on an airplane or something. That's Hitman, right? I'm like, so it's it all adds up. Let's put it this way.
Mm-hmm. The other question I had about in terms of a franchise is something that's near and dear to Cam and I's heart, and that is Remo Williams. We're big softies when it comes to the Fred Ward film from the 1980s, and I note through your X/Twitter bio that you have a connection to it. So can you share any secrets on what's happening with Remo?
Obviously not secrets, but the only thing I can tell you is that I'm working on it with Chuck Roven, who's a brilliant Academy Award-winning producer. He's a legend, and he's, as a matter of fact, it's about to be honored by American Cinematique, and it's, I think, well deserved, and it's about fucking time. So we're gonna do it as a TV show, and now we're gonna do it as a movie, and it's got a brilliant writer. That's all I can say. Otherwise, Chuck will send assassins after me.
Well, what is it about just the character, the literary character, that you think like still works?
There's something there.
He's one of us. He's one of us.
Mm.
He's one of us. I think in today's world, it's very divided. It's with technology, it feels a little inhuman. We've lost touch with our humanity in a way, like we date through apps. Younger people are losing their ability to engage with one another verbally, personally. We're all isolated. We're all in our silos, whether politically or culturally. And Remo's a low-tech, real guy. And he's what we all want to go back to being. And he's one of us. And I think that's what I love about that character. But I wouldn't be as interested in him if the world he was thrusted into was, mob and fucking drug dealers. It's not. It's freaking badass James Bond meets, Mission Impossible meets crazy villains and, cyborgs and femme fatales and, the cast of characters that he's at cure with. It's the combination of those two elements that I feel like audiences are going to respond to, because it's going to feel like it's just us being thrusted into this incredible world, and I think it's kind of like something that I think is a throwback, and I think that's why both, and Chuck has been involved with it longer than I have, but it's just something that we both respond to and the writer responds to.
It's just crazy when you think about just how many volumes of the Destroyer books there are out there. Such a cachet of stories that just have not, I don't want to use the word exploited, but haven't really been shed a light upon, perhaps we put it in that way. Because obviously there was the film, there was an attempt at a TV show as well in the 80s. But that's been it. And it's basically been quiet ever since. And I just feel like there's room for that. There's room for that story.
Oh, 100%. And I agree with you. And, part of it has been because it's been tied up. Part of it's been because there were other franchises going at the time. And I think now that the business is so fragmented and there's so many outlets to get your IP out or content out, I hate using the word content, but you get your film or television shows out.
Sure.
I think people are now looking at different things, and most people don't know how big Remo is. I mean, we find it very surprising that they don't know. It's, again, it's over 100 books, I think 111, 115, and it's sold, I don't know, whatever, 100 million copies since 1973. And it's got a hardcore dedicated fan base. And it's, and he's just a cool character. He's just someone that if you haven't read the books, you're going to be engaged by and kind of want to see him succeed. So that's what we're kind of leaning into. And it's very much of a spy craft world and story, but the character is not a spy per se. He becomes a spy, but he's a cop who's on death row.
Well, I'm excited to see where Remo goes, and hopefully I can catch you at the press screening or something like that, and we can talk more Remo, because I will be following this one with hot anticipation.
You guys are invited for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, just send me the email. We will.
I love to make the movie first, though.
Well,
well, you've got two fans in your corner at least, anyway. $20. It has to start somewhere. I suppose then pivoting on to other things you're working on outside of the spy realm. What are you sort of working on? What are you sort of excited about at the moment that's cooking?
The only thing I can say is that I'm working on a big video game with a massive movie star and an incredible writer. It's not spy at all, but it's really cool. I think it's probably safe to say it's the biggest project I've ever been involved with. So and I'm not the only one involved with it. Obviously, there's other people, but it's something that I kind of put together with the different elements. But so it's yeah. I mean, I'm hoping we can announce it as soon as the deal's closed. But we're in negotiations with a major studio. So I'm really excited about that. And then the other one that I'm super psyched about is Battle Chasers, which is a video game and a comic book. So I'm doing that with Alcon, and we just hired a director. We're closing his deal. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's since I left Constantine, it's been seeding. I've been closing deals, picking up IP, packaging them, and the plan for starting August, September is to kind of have them launch and move forward and hopefully get made.
Does it feel like there's more opportunities for adapting video game properties right now in the wake of Super Mario Brothers, Borderlands, Last of Us?
More opportunities. You can't find any more IP anymore. It's done. Everything is taken. It's the number one IP.
Wow.
Kevin Feige may disagree. It's the number one IP in Hollywood by far.
Wow.
Marvel has Marvel books. DC has their books. But if you send a video game property to a studio and a comic book property, they'll take the video game property 10 times out of 10. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I'm doing Kane and Lynch. So we're back on doing Kane and Lynch. I'm doing it with a big producer. We're partners on. So we just got 2 great writers on it. So you expect to hear, those guys are going to be back. And there's some kind of a spy element to that, but it's not full-on spy like Hitman, or Remo, but Kane and Lynch has a spy element. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's not even a question. It's the number one IP for film and television.
Wow.
Well, I'll throw a question at you. This wasn't what I usually close with. I'll have one more question after this. But you were asked a long time ago, what do you want to do as your first step as a producer? And you said, I want Hitman. Now, years removed from that, what's the next big project that you haven't got your hands on yet, but you want to make? What's the sort of pie in the sky thing you want to do?
But if I tell you that, then somebody's going to hear it and they're going to beat me to the punch.
Okay.
No. In all seriousness, guys, I either have everything I want or they're just not available.
Fair.
Like to tell you the truth, I would love to get another shot at Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
This time have somebody pay for it. But, part of me also feels like I know it's going to sound pretentious, but I don't think Metal Gear should be made unless Kojima directed it. I really don't. I can't even, it's like, I just, no, he's like the Nolan to the Dark Knight trilogy. It's just, I don't know. It's just bizarre. I mean, maybe we dodged a bullet, maybe we would have ruined it because it was 2001. And, it wasn't, I don't think the business and the creative community was mature enough with regard to this genre, the video game genre. So, but I just don't, that's kind of pie in the sky, but I mean, I don't want to do it without Kojima. So it's directing. And so but the one I'm doing, the big one with a big movie star, that's something that's, I used to have the toys for when I was an attorney and they would sit on my desk and I never thought, 20 some odd years later, I'd be involved with it. It's a cool one.
Okay, a lot of teasing here, but I appreciate and I understand why. I'm looking forward to finding out the answers to these.
I'm not
questions.
teasing for the sake of teasing. I just don't want to get in trouble.
I know.
Yeah,
no, I know. I don't want you getting in trouble on our account. The last question we have for you, Adrian, we ask this to every single person that's ever been on the show. Very important question. We talk about spy movies every week here on Spy Hards. Adrian, what is your favorite spy movie of all time?
North by Northwest.
That was quick and a great answer.
I love it.
It's not even close. And then Goldfinger. That's it. Done.
Wow. Is that actually you've pinged something in my head? Is that why Zach Quinto dies by being pushed into the electrics like Oddjob in 47?
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, I kept telling Rupert. I think he got annoyed with me after a while. I'm like, because Rupert in person to me looks like the young Sean Connery.
Right.
I'm like, dude, this is the Bond, Oddjob, Gold Knox, Fort Knox fight, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not. This is not James Bond. I'm like, trust me. As you guys are fighting, I'm looking at James Bond. Yes, that's exactly. And it's a very interesting catch by you, Scott. I'm very impressed by you.
Thank you. I was also going to say is the driving around sequence under the Olympic Stadium a nod to Tomorrow Never Dies, but.
I could lie to you and say yes, but that was designed by Dave and Chad and their team and not me.
I was pushing my luck with that one, I know.
I was on set for that and I thought I was going to get hit by a car, but those guys were so talented. And I mean, it was awesome. That was a really good memory. That's a great location. We got the location. It was fun.
Well, now I'm like racking my brain. It's like both the movies you named and Hitman are action heroes in suits. So clearly that's something that is connecting the three.
Maybe subconsciously, that's why I wanted to, there is something to that. I mean, this guy is so beautifully put together, meticulous tailoring, red tie, black suit, white shirt, cufflinks. Maybe. I just think North by Northwest is the greatest spy movie ever made. And the central character is not even a fucking spy.
Yeah.
He's mistaken for a spy, So.
It's perfect. It is one of our favorites too. It's probably Alfred Hitchcock's best spy film. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking Hitman and all things beyond with you, Adrian. And I want to thank you for taking the time to break it down with us.
Man, it's been a pleasure, Scott, Cam. You guys are great. I'd love to do this again. And hopefully when, Hitman comes back to the world in a big way very soon, hopefully, we can have a conversation. In the meantime, just make sure if you use a headshot of me, it's a nice angle.
I will be using one. Don't worry. I'll find a good one and let you know.
It's a good one.
Well, yeah. I will be in touch when those things appear. Don't worry. I'll be appearing in your email inbox very soon after things are announced. But Adrian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Likewise. And thank you both again. Really appreciate it.
No. Thank you.
All right.
There you go, folks. That was our chat with Adrian Askarieh. I want to thank him once again for taking the time to speak with us, to talk about all things Hitman, Remo, Danger Girl, and beyond. He's obviously got a lot of things cooking at the moment that he couldn't share all of the juicy secrets about, but something tells me this isn't the last time you'll be hearing that man's name in the near future.
No, not at all. And I thought this interview was really interesting because for me, I don't know very much about the world of video games. And so to have this kind of guided tour into the process of, acquiring these IPs and working through the production on the two Hitman movies and then other projects he would love to develop and bring to the screen and to TV as well, I thought this was just really intriguing. And when he was talking about how, like, in Hollywood at this very moment, there's no such thing as a free video game IP. Like, they are being snapped up left, right, and center. That was like a revelation to me. I had no idea.
I cannot wait for the Virtua Fighter film.
Primal Rage, perhaps?
Now that's something I would turn up for. Or how about Rocket League?
Rocket League, okay, yeah. Or Ice Climber.
The Ice Climbers. Now Cam is showing his age with that one.
That's right. I'm taking it all the way back.
Yeah, but it is quite surprising, though. You wouldn't think it was such an emphasis in Hollywood right now, but I guess with things like Fallout and The Last of Us doing so well on streaming, they must just have decided that this is where the money is now.
The superhero well is not empty, but it's showing signs of struggles at this point, where you're still going to have fatigue. Yeah, you're going to have successes, but you've also got Madam Webs. and, the Marvels, and movies that are not performing well at all, which was not the case previously, where you could put out a movie like Amazing Spider-Man 2, which wasn't very good, but it still made a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is not the case now. And so I can see why, in the wake of the successes, big successes of Super Mario Brothers at the box office, and then The Last of Us and Fallout on, streaming, why that is now the go-to place, because they're always going to look for the next trend, and they haven't figured out what it is. And at some point, superhero films are not going to be the primary IP you're seeing in the multiplex. It's going to be something else, and it makes sense to me why they're looking at video games right now.
Hey, I'm all for it. I've seen a lot of my favorite video games get adapted over the years to mediocre results. So I would love to see a bigger push. Max Payne?
No, not again.
Silent Hill?
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I would kill to see like a great Contra movie.
Sure. That was a good game.
Yeah,
I'd go for that. But talking about the interview a little bit more, one thing I found really quite interesting and quite refreshing, as I mentioned at the top, was just Adrian being so candid about some of the struggles he faced with both Hitman and Hitman Agent 47. Obviously, there were some details he didn't want to get into because he's still, a working producer, and that's absolutely fine. But you can tell that the man is passionate about the Hitman brand, IP, if you want to call it that, or just, the character himself, Agent 47. And you often see genre fans, be it in video games, comic books, anything like that, when they see their beloveds get adapted in these sorts of ways, they always go, oh, these people don't understand our games, yada, yada, yada. I think Hitman fans can rest easy and sleep well tonight, knowing that Adrian is out there defending them, because I think he's probably the biggest town crier they could ask for.
Well, and also, like, I had my issues with the two Hitman films.
Yeah.
But I never had the sense that they were like an embarrassment of the IP or the character.
No.
At all. Like, you felt that there was a certain integrity to what was being presented, and there may have been issues. And he talked about the production where they only shot like 20% of the original script. Like, who knows what that movie is if we get the actual Skip Woods script adapted to a film.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a much bigger hit and a much more beloved film in the long run, perhaps. But like, I'm sorry, I've seen so many video game movies that literally could not care less about the fact that they are based on something that people like, and they don't care about what is interesting about the IP they have. It's just about selling a brand to people and making something kind of cheap, quick, and easy. And I always got the sense with like Hitman, even from doing my research before we did this interview, that they cared. They wanted to adapt Hitman properly to the big screen, and as Adrian said, there was struggles along the way, and that's the case with just about any movie that exists. And, the original Hitman was a hit. There's definitely a fandom around it. And the second one, I'm sure, has admirers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clear to see that the franchise still has a future on the screen, be that big or small. So I think whilst his results might have varied with the two films, and his personal take and feeling on what he did may vary, I think you could also argue that he's kept the brand alive in other mediums other than video games. Now, IO Interactive are sort of the shepherds for video games, and they've been very successful. And as he pointed out, those games have gotten more and more successful over the years. But Adrian's been the guy out there putting in front of everyone else. And I don't know what the percentages are, but I'm pretty sure everyone doesn't play video games.
I don't. And so, like, if you can sell a Hitman movie to me, then clearly you're on the right path. Like, if the concept clicks with me, then I go, okay, I have no knowledge of this video game whatsoever, but I understand just from a marketing standpoint what is being sold to me and what's cool about it.
Yeah. I mean, you saw a guy with no hair and you're like, hey,
Scott,
I could be him. Well, I'm proud of being me. It's all good. But yeah, so that was some of the bigger takeaways from it. And also just, hearing about there might be a future for Remo Williams on the big screen. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah. And I am intrigued by Danger Girl, taking a very popular comic book series and bringing that to the screen in perhaps, unique ways. I think that could be compelling. Remo Williams, though, it will be really intriguing to me because there's such a wealth of material to draw from. but I'm not exactly sure like what Remo Williams is in 2024, and I'm sure that that's a challenge that they'll have to go through to bring that to the screen properly, but I'm interested to see what they come up with.
But I do agree with his sort of his point that Remo's appeal is that he is an everyman in a very unique situation. And, you know, Remo was referred to as the American James Bond, and, you know, James Bond was brought up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He went to the best schools, into the Navy, and then became a secret agent. You know, he never really wanted for anything. The whole idea of Remo, at least to me, is that he is a cop that was, you know, badly injured, put on life support, and then saved by this company and this master who would train him, and he gains these extra powers because he is such a good, has such a good core. Like it's his inner sort of compass that drives him and makes him such a good hero to follow. And so I'm keen to hear what they do if they follow that path, because I think they are on the right path to success. And I know Fred Ward only had one chance at bat with that film, and it wasn't 100%. It wasn't great. I'm just hoping that there is a second life, a second adventure, if you will.
You mean a third adventure? You're forgetting Remo Williams' The Prophecy, as we tackled on the Patreon.
Never existed. But there you go. That sort of about wraps us up on the Hitman films for now. But who knows? We could be coming back to the world of Agent 47 in the future. Plus, you know, with Danger Girl and Remo Williams in the works, this might not be the last time you hear Adrian on the show. But what a chat. And I'm glad we got to chronicle the adventures of Agent 47.
Yeah, me too. This was a lot of fun.
Well, throwing it over to you, Mr. Smith, what do we have coming up next week?
Yeah, we are tackling a big, splashy new movie. We are looking at the Netflix spy action thriller, The Union, starring Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry. I assume you have all been devouring this movie because it was a big August release on Netflix, and so we're not going to make you wait 2 years until we tackle it. We're doing it right away.
How stands the Union, folks?
The Union stands strong.
You'll find out next week. If you like what you heard on the show, please consider joining us over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/spyhards. It's just a little extra you can kick in every month to keep the lights on here at SpyHards HQ. Me and Cam do this every week for the love of spy movies. You all know this. You can get a ton of bonus episodes over there that we spend a lot of time doing. We talk about non-spy movies and spy TV shows too, stuff like Slow Horses, all happening over there. John le Carré adaptations. Check it out, patreon.com/spyhards. Make sure to follow us discreetly on social media at spyhards. That's SPYHARDS on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But until next time, folks, I'm off to buy some white hair dye and work on my Zachary Quinto impersonation.